Hello everyone. In this lesson we'll be working with the variants of the count function that are included in both O-level and A-level syllabus. One of it, Countifs, has not yet been tested in the O-level syllabus, but it's good to know about that function too. Let's go through them one by one. The first one, count, is used to count cells which contain numbers. So for example, I've got some values over here, and if I use the count function over here, I'd write it as equal to count, bracket open, and then highlight this range, bracket close, and it gives me 3 as the output. Now if you look at it, you would notice that out of the 5 cells that I highlighted as the range for that function, only 3 contain numbers. That is why this function returned the value 3 as the result. Count A is used to count non-blank cells, cells which are not blank, which have a value in them. That value could be a number, it could be a string, or anything else. So how do we use that? We again start it the same way, equal to, as we do with all the functions and formulas, count A, bracket open, and then I give this range and press enter, and this one returns 4. And you can see that out of the 5 cells that I highlighted, 4 contain data in them. Count blank. Count blank, as it's obvious from its name, is used to count cells which do not have anything stored in them. How do we use it? Equal to count blank, highlight the range, bracket close, and it obviously returns 1 because there is only one cell that does not contain anything out of the 5 cells that I selected. Now based on the scenario in a given activity, you're supposed to choose the best option out of these that we have available. If you need to count cells that contain only numbers, but you need to select the whole range, then you can use count, because it will only be counting cells that contain numbers and nothing else. It won't count blank cells, it won't count cells with string or other values in them. If you need to count all the cells that contain any value, then in that case you have to use count A. Sometimes we need to use a combination of functions. So depending on the scenario, you can use a combination of any of these. We will look at the different scenarios when we go through the activities in a different lesson. Coming to the next one, Countif. Countif is used to count cells that fulfill a specific criteria. Let's look at this summary that we have to produce from this data that we have used with other functions in the earlier lessons. We need to count the number of days with rain per month for Marie Kagan, for March, April, separately in these 4 cells. So if you look at the data, sunshine, rainfall and wind speed for Marie, sunshine, rainfall and wind speed for Kagan, and these are the months, the dates for the 2 different months. So what I'm going to do is, to get the value for this number of days with rain per month, I'm going to start it with the function equal to Countif, bracket open, and then since I'm supposed to find it out for Marie for the month of March, so I'm going to go down to this particular column, this row, and start from this position and highlight till C55. Now once I've done that, the next thing that I need to provide, this is the range that I've selected. The next thing that I need to provide after typing the comma is the criteria. The criteria basically is the condition on the basis of which it will give me the count value. So since the requirement is to find out the number of days with rain per month, so obviously it means that wherever the value is not 0, it should count that. So the expression that I have to type as a criteria must apply accordingly. One of the simplest way to apply that would be to write in double quotes, as we always write the condition in double quotes, greater than 0, double quotes, and bracket close. This is the easiest way of working it out, that wherever the value is greater than 0, it should include that in the count. I could also write this expression differently, but first of all, let's check this one, the result of this one. When I press enter, it returns 18. So there are 18 days in March for Murray when there was a rainfall. If I change the expression, instead of 0, if I write not equal to 0, instead of greater than 0, if I write not equal to 0, it should return the same result. It's still returning 18. So when we are required to write down the criteria, we first of all have to understand what the requirement is. And then accordingly, we should be able to work out a condition that would give us the desired results. Now you need to write down the formulas for working out the other three values for this. Coming to the next part. Number of days with a wind speed of less than 7 knots per month. In this case, we again have similar scenario. But the difference in this case is that we've been given a value, sort of like an expression, evaluation expression that is written in word format. So we'll work it out for Murray for the month of March. Number of days with a wind speed of less than 7 knots. This is the wind speed column. So we'll start off the formula equal to Countif, bracket open, highlight the wind speed range from D25 to D55, because obviously we have to evaluate the wind speed in this particular case. Then comma to write down the condition, the criteria, and in double quotes, what should I write? It says less than 7 knots. So I'd write less than, sign, and then 7, double quotes, bracket close, and there you have it. So when you are given a condition or an activity in the examination, they could write it in this particular format or in this format. So you have to use a little bit of common sense to work out the condition accordingly. Here it is very obvious. Here it's simple, but not that obvious. So you have to figure this one out, but it's quite simple again. Now sometimes we need to work out the count based on not just one condition, but maybe 2 conditions or 3 conditions or more. Usually they don't give you more than 2 conditions if that sort of a question does come in the examination. So just like we did with the sum and the average functions, we have a similar option available for count as well, where we can apply 2 different criteria to work out the count. So what do we need to see? Number of days with no rain and wind speed of less than 7 knots per month. So we'll work it out again for Murray and for the month of March. This time we would use Countifs because Countif only allows us to use one criteria. So one column and one criteria. So since here we need 2 different criteria which are going to be applied to 2 different column values. So we need to use Countifs because that one allows us to use multiple columns and multiple criteria. Like one criteria plus for each column that we select. So the first requirement is criteria range 1. So we'll look at the one for the first requirement, which is no rain. So I'm going to highlight this till C55 and then comma. And now what I have to write is criteria 1, the criteria for this particular range that I've selected. So since it's no rain, so I have to write equal to 0. Because if it's 0, then it means no rain, obviously, right? Then, comma, and the next criteria, wind speed of less than 7 knots. So highlight the second range, and then, comma, and I have to supply the next criteria. Here, it's less than 7 knots, so in double quotes, I'm going to write down less than 7, double quotes, bracket close, and enter. So there you have it. Here, now the count has been worked out based on 2 different factors. Entries, where there were no rain and the wind speed was less than 7 knots per month. Now if you look at this one that we had worked out earlier, this was working out the count of days where the wind speed was less than 7 knots. Here we are doing the count of days with wind speed of less than 7 knots plus there was no rain on the days. So the counts are different. So these were the different variants of the count function.